Hi, and welcome to another Software and Internet Monthly Market Report brought to you by Sanford Advisors. September was actually a surprisingly busy month. Similar sort of level of transactions, which we'll get to in a minute, but in terms of the amount invested, 32.3 billion, which was obviously one of the bigger months. A lot of that was obviously driven by Figma, which was a $22 billion deal acquired by Adobe, but several other large transactions as well. Voyager was acquired for 3.7 billion or 2.9 times revenue multiple, and EQT acquired Billtrust for 1.9 billion at a 8.7 times revenue multiple. The other revenue multiple that was disclosed for the month was Channel Advisor, which was at 3.7 times. So in terms of the average, you can see, where we come out in terms of the number of transactions. So pretty much, we've talked a lot about this new level that we've seen in 2022 of between 115 and 120 transactions. So we're in that kind of zip code this month at 125. So at this new kind of depressed level that we've kind of been seeing for most of the year, and expected to kind of continue, like, based on what we're seeing, probably in between 100 and 125 transactions a month is what we're expecting for the rest of the year. In terms of like where this leads to for the whole year, well, in terms of dollar deployed, it's a massive uptick versus last year. We're already way in excess of what we did last year, which was a big record anyway. So it's going to be a very large year in terms of dollars deployed. That trend of number of transactions, you can kind of see that's coming down obviously from the peak of last year, but still encouragingly enough above where we were in 2018 and 2019. So a healthier market probably than we were going into the pandemic, but not quite as healthy obviously as we saw last year. In terms of valuations, that the trend has continued between the tightness between the 75th percentile and 25th percentile has continued to be relatively tight versus where it was at the end of last year and the beginning of this year. So that's encouraging to see. Some of those outlier transactions on the top and the bottom are less likely right now. But again, the average is ticking down as we can see here. We were at an average of 8.6 times for a SaaS business last year, and this year we're at 6.4 times year to date. So I would expect us to land about that level for the year end in terms of the coming months. It seems like most things are in that kind of 5 to 8 times revenue right now for SaaS businesses. And then the non-SaaS, surprisingly, has continued to rise. So 4.7 times being the average there, up from last year's 4.4. On the VC side of stuff, a relatively busy month, although slower than what the average has been so far this year. So 5 billion invested in the month, 470 transactions, and the average deal size very consistent with what we've seen recently at 5.2 million. Some of the larger transactions, Power raised 316 million, Triller raised 310, and Loot Mogul raised 200 million. So some very large late stage transactions still happening in the VC arena. Where does this lead us for the year? Well, if we track at this volume for the rest of the year, we're going to be a little bit short of the 2021 record, but obviously still considerably above 2019 and 2020. So encouraging to see that, while volume is down, it's still way above pre-pandemic levels. And in terms of valuations for VC raises, surprisingly enough, the early stage deals are up year over year. I think this is probably a little bit of a sparse data thing that's really driving that. From what we're hearing, talking to a lot of the VCs, valuations are down across the board. And you can see that in the mid to late transactions where they are down slightly from 2021 levels. We expect that to kind of continue. Everything we're hearing from the VCs right now is there's a lot of softness in that market. And the VCs are being much more selective with where they're putting their dollars. Anyway, that's a brief update for the month of September. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And otherwise, we'll see you next month.